What seemingly harmless personality traits ended up turning out to be a deal breaker in your relationships? Conflict avoidance. Nobody wants to fight all the time, but an inability to have a disagreement without shutting down completely is not sustainable in an adult relationship. It only builds resentment. Agreed. When I met my boyfriend, I had asked him how things were in his previous relationships. He said he never got into arguments with his ex because he's just not the type. Sounded kind of peaceful tbh. As my mom always says, I grew up in a household where issues were solved by laying all of your cards on the table, even if it resulted in a screaming match. Whether you solved the problem or not, at least you knew exactly where you stood with everyone, and you always knew you were welcome at the dinner table. Next time I won't be so afraid to get into a relationship with someone who's angry sometimes and who calls me out every once in a while. It's better than ignoring everything until you don't even care about the person any longer. Agreeability. After a while you realize they never make any decisions and just go with whatever you want to do, which makes it so that you make literally all the decisions. It's exhausting. Yeah, my last relationship. It's also a problem because they're never really agreeing to everything. I spent so much time worrying I was taking advantage of her agreeableness and continually checked in. I talked to my therapist about it. I tied myself in knots, but that didn't stop her from building a mental list of every single thing I did wrong, just to bust out when she dumped me. Folks, not advocating for yourself hurts yourself and others. Suffering to be kind is actually quite cruel. My husband does exactly the same, only to bite my ear in many arguments later. I didn't mind when you decided this and that. I didn't complain when you did such and such. Why are you arguing with me now that I do this and that? PFFFFTTTT. Him being a social butterfly. Turns out he was always seeing who he could reel in for later and had more backburners than a restaurant. Just went through this myself. Hurts. I'm sorry. It's awful. Always funny. It's fine to be funny, but it becomes a problem when the person prioritizes being funny over being kind. They'll say something critical or sarcastic and try to hide behind humor. Or, being funny is such a big part of their identity that they will prioritize that over every else. I wish in my younger days I had prioritized kindness over being funny in men. When they are always on, it's frustrating. I love funny dudes. It's one reason I fell for my partner. But you gotta realize there's a time and place, and if you're being serious and they're joking around, nope. He was always sweet and adoring towards me, while a complete monster to anyone/everyone on the outside. Lol, it's not that he has a soft spot for you. It only lasts so long before they switch up on you too. My ex was the exact opposite. Sweet and kind to everyone, then felt safe with me, so would dump all the day's frustration on me. Got worse and worse. I hope you're safe now /U0001F90D. Consistently making demeaning jokes about you or your abilities. Death by 1,000 cuts. It's passive aggressive and completely repulsive. Oh, my ex did this too. And if I ever said anything, it was just take a joke. Stop being so serious. But if I made a joke to him, all hell broke loose. Being a hustler or glorifying the grind. There will always be a next thing to focus on. And it won't be the relationship, right? Like I see workaholic on the apps, and I'm like, no thank you. He was petrified to address anything that even remotely bothered him in our relationship, which seemed like a good thing at first. We never fought. What actually ended up happening is me assuming everything was great for the last 6 months of our relationship, and he had this growing hate/resentment towards me. I had one like this. She proposed then broke up with me 5 months later. I had no idea she wasn't happy. Yeah, I was blindsided when he ended things after nearly 2 years together. This was about a month and a half ago. I'm still heartbroken, of course, but I'm slowly starting to realize it was probably for the best. I don't want to be with someone who doesn't know how to communicate. Passiveness. Turns out they were passive about everything, including what they wanted for their future, career, money, etc. There wasn't one thing in their life that they desired for themselves. I'm currently noticing this with my partner. It's rough and it hurts. Same. Terrifying feeling I'm the only hope of us having savings, a house, helping the kids, if we have some, move if we want. It's basically on my shoulders. I realized some people just want to live day by day and never plan anything and pretend they'll never get older and wish they had, even if he couldn't. Just having any ambition or goals is good. Disputatiousness. At first it felt like fun banter, but after a few years it was exhausting how he always had to be right. Couldn't even have minor disagreements like who the actor in a movie was without it becoming a whole thing. Never mind if we actually needed to discuss something serious. My ex was like this. He never agreed with me on literally anything. Even things as minor as the best cookie at our favorite shop. Everything was a disagreement. A lot of it was minor, but those add up. Not being able to make decisions. It always kinda annoyed me that he had no opinion on what he wanted to eat or watch. But someday when he met someone he was interested in, and the time came to choose between me and her, he had no idea how to choose. That's when I realized I had to make all the decisions. All the time. I even had to make the decision to end our relationship because he wasn't able to choose. Confidence can very easily turn into condescension, and that quickly seeps into all interactions and builds animosity. I get what you mean here, because my previous partner was doing things out of ego, not for me but for himself. Masking it as if he was doing them for me kept my stomach full of anxiety because my intuition was screaming to run. It's hard to be with a person who doesn't see you. His focus on mental health. He ended up blaming me for all his mental health problems. I was not the cause, even though it turned out he was the one cheating. To him it wasn't cheating. It was self-care and getting his needs met. Apostrophe. Always being the loudest, like needing to always be right and have the last word. At a point it becomes a bickering match, and I'm not here for it. This is for friendships too. People pleasers. I used to think they were generous people with kind hearts, but over time I learned not to trust them because they're not true to themselves and are very resentful people due to their inability to say how they really feel. They do nice things to get you to like them, not because they actually want to. I don't like that. Oof. As a recovering people pleaser, what you said is on point and I wish it were talked about more. It might help some people realize that their people-pleasing behavior is not healthy and that it doesn't reflect well on them. There's definitely an undercurrent of, usually unintentional, manipulation. Feeling that it's your responsibility to manage the needs and emotions of everyone around you. Sadly, I think a lot of people-pleasers don't realize their behavior is unhealthy and manipulative. Instead they call themselves empaths that seek to help others. Not true at all. The best people to keep around you are those who have or are working towards establishing strong boundaries, because you'll never have to question the intentions of their actions. People who avoid confrontation. No, it doesn't make you easy to get along with. It makes you frustrating to date, because instead of communicating, you bottle things up and let resentment fester. I'm guilty of this. It ruined my recent long-term relationship. I would have mental breakdowns once a month because I kept everything to myself. I didn't realize how damaging it was until after we split up. I'm working on myself and it's gotten better, but I refuse to be in another committed relationship until I feel I can implement healthy boundaries and communicate effectively. Exact same boat, but due to severe people pleasing in addition to not knowing WTF was going on with me / my emotions throughout the whole relationship / U0001 Fee 0. I feel that too. Poor money management. Not everything is about money, but if you can't afford to support yourself while also somehow being able to afford frivolous wants, then that's a no-go. I will not be your stand-in mom and take care of you if you're capable of doing so yourself, just because you can't prioritize where your money goes. Agreeability, which someone else said, but also quietness. It's hard to build a relationship with someone who has no personal ideas that they are willing to share, argue about, defend. After a while you realize you are the only one talking, and it's very lonely feeling to not be able to have a conversation. I feel this one in my current relationship. He is such a kind guy. but it feels like I'm talking to myself a lot of the time. I'm sorry you are in the same situation as I am. We are actually engaged, which makes it harder to just let go. If you can't get him out of his shell, then don't keep trying. The loneliness is literally tearing me apart. For me it was messiness. It translated to me being responsible for all the housework and cleaning up after his mess. I became a caregiver, not a partner. This is a big deal if you have very different levels of cleanliness. This wasn't why I left my partner, but it was a constant issue that I felt would never change. I'd ask him all the time to do the smallest stuff, like occasionally wipe his hair off the bathtub lip. I cleaned everything else while I showered, and even after leaving wipes for this purpose right there on the tub, he never did it once. It wasn't even my mess, but I had to clean it every time, in addition to all the regular cleaning I did of our mutual stuff. I loved him, and he was great in so many ways, but asking him to be cleaner never clicked for him. Never ever ever. He'd say sorry. He'd say okay, I'll work on that. But he never did. There's a limit to kindness I can take. I have been learning not to people please, but my husband still does, because he wants to be kind. I love how kind he is, one of the reasons I married him, but he picks the worst people to be kind to, and even when I tell him it's a bad idea, he feels he has to do it anyways, which has left us short on money and time a few times. Today it lead to us being short a microwave. That's when the question needs to be asked of him: why are you choosing to disadvantage/disenfranchise your wife? We humans can often take our loved ones for granted and forget that we have to choose our partner and children daily. Love ain't set and forget. It's that houseplant that you've had for years and thought was indestructible because you rarely tended it, but then one day you are shocked to see that it's dead. I was too kind when younger and worried overly what others thought of me. Holy heck, it's tiring. I'll learn to mentally follow the various possible consequences of any decision and assess their actual impact vs my perceived, catastrophized impact. It really helps with decision making and reduces/eliminates the anxiety around them. When you think about it, it's actually quite egotistic to assume that others are giving our actions the same weight we are. Lol. Most times friends/family/workmates are just gonna say no worries. Somebody who is too passive. I don't wish to carry the whole mental or emotional load of a relationship. Preach. Mama's boys. In a sense they are great, because they tend to have more respect for women. However, sometimes it's more than that. If they never disagree with their mom and always go with mama's suggestions or advice over yours, then that's a red flag. My husband won't stick up for me to his mom, and I'm feeling resentful for it.